Welcome back to Integrative Psychonautics. Hope you're doing well out there. In today's video, we're going to be talking a little bit about a very important concept that I think a lot of people may have missed along the way that, I learned in my early personal development journey that you don't hear spoken of very often. And this is the distinction between the two different layers of our experience and how this applies in terms of personal growth, personal transformation, especially our healing work with ourselves. This is something you're really going to want to know. So if you're someone who struggles with your own kind of personal story or the particulars of what happened to you or what you've dealt with or what you are currently dealing with, and you are a little stuck for where to go, how to resolve this because it's charged for you, this is going to be really useful information. So if this interests you, please join me and let's talk about it. Okay, quick bit of context as I like to do with these videos. So I'm always, as I've said in other recent videos, I'm always as a coach trying to refine and clarify my messaging and my framing, both here on the channel for you guys and, privately with my clients to give the most useful, clear understandings of ways of viewing interacting with ourselves in order to create healing, personal growth, and personal transformation, right? And what I'm going to share with you here today is this idea that we have at least two layers to our experience in any given moment, and that these two different layers of our experience both impact the kind of experience we're having, and that there are different ways we want to think about how we might want to approach these different layers of our experience in order to get better results when it comes to personal growth and transformation and healing and all that stuff. So without further ado, let me go ahead and just start sharing with you about these two layers, and this will start to make a lot of sense. And hopefully this will be a useful tool for helping you know what to work on and where to bring your attention if you've got like a bunch of stuff that's up for you and you're like, how do I organize and relate to all of this? And it's overwhelming, confusing. So without further ado, let's talk about it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these two layers of your experience and what they are and how they kind of work to impact what it is that you're experiencing. So the first layer that I want to draw your attention to here is essentially the layer of what we could think of as the content of your experience in a given moment, right? So this would be your perceptions, the meanings you're making, the narrative arc of you as a person and what's happening in the current moment and who you were previously and who you want to become. The content involves your emotions and your thoughts and your views and the entire kind of story that you're experiencing and that you are telling yourself and the meaning you're making about it and the relationships and the people and the roles and all of that. That's all what we could think of as the content of your experience, right? Now, while all of that may be accurate or inaccurate, valid, or perhaps like slightly off track, there's a lot of room to look at what's happening in the content of your experience. And if you think about it, when you normally go to like a talk therapy kind of therapy, or you're having some sort of an expectation of a therapeutic interaction with a therapist, generally what you are expecting and assuming is going to be the case is that you're going to be interacting around this content, right? So you're going to be talking about what happened and the past or your story or who you are as a person and your identity and the identities and personalities of the people around you who may have impacted you or shaped you or the life experiences you've had. This is all content, right? So that's one layer of your nervous system we're constantly experiencing. We're constantly having perceptions and experiences and interpretations about those perceptions and experiences. And we are, operating as a personality with an identity and a narrative about who we are and about our past. And we're interacting with others who have the same thing and there are roles and dynamics, etc. Hopefully I've been a little verbose here, but hopefully you get my point, what I mean when I say content rather. The other, which I just kind of spoilered there, is context. So this would be the container inside of which the content unfolds. And in this case, the container or the lens or the window through which you experience everything you experience is your body and your nervous system, right? So the other layer here of your experience in a given moment isn't just the narrative and the story and the interpretation and all of that, but also the condition of your nervous system in a given moment. How regulated is your nervous system? What kind of stress, what kind of emotion, what kind of somatic experiences, how well slept are you, right? How much energy do you have? Are you hangry, right? Blah, 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 blah. What is the condition of the system through which you are viewing and interpreting all the content of your experience, right? So this would be kind of, you could think of as the context or the frame around the experience. And what most of us kind of know is pretty self-evidently true is the state of your emotions and the state of your body and the state of how regulated you are massively determines how you interpret things, right? So this is really important to understand that if you're really 9 out of 10 stressed out, even really chill, subtle, simple, innocuous life experiences can seem really overwhelming and too much and overstimulating. If you are the other way, you're hypo, right? You're kind of numb, dissociated, spaced out, not in your body, disconnected. You could be experiencing something dramatically intense and wonderful, and it could have very little impact on you, or anywhere in between, right? So the state of your nervous system, right? Here's a great one that I love as a good illustrator of this. Humor, right? You ever get on a roll laughing with people and everything's funny and everything's like a joke or an innuendo or a playful turn of phrase. And once your kind of mind gets locked into the humor kind of vibe and the humor way of perceiving and processing things, it doesn't matter what happens around you. It can start to become hilarious and funny, right? So that's context. That's the context of your nervous system shaping the contents of the narrative and of the experiences and the interpretations in the moment, right? And so from my point of view, once we know this, right? Once we're aware of this and self-aware of this, there are a couple things we want to know about this, right? Like, what do we go for first? What's the relationship between the two? And then this starts to help us understand where to go, where to put our attention as we're doing growth work or healing work or transformative work. So the first thing I want you to know here is that there is a feedback loop between the two, right? And you may have kind of thought about this because you may be like, well, yeah, I can see what you mean. There are these two layers, but one affects the other, right? The state of my nervous system affects the meaning I make. I get that. But also the meaning that I'm making affects the state of my nervous system, right? If I, see a rubber snake on the ground, but it's not a real snake, I'm still going to have a fight or flight response probably if I walk up near it and suddenly don't recognize, my first reaction is going to be perhaps a bit of startledness, right? Which I would say is absolutely true. And so what we want to understand here is there is a feedback loop between the content of our experience and the context of our experience, right? So theoretically, you can intervene in either, right? You can work with yourself at either level, and it will have implications for both. But what I've noticed is that often it's way more effective for people to focus first and foremost, especially if we've got let's say, backlog of accumulated stress or backlog of accumulated emotion or backlog of accumulated something in our nervous system that is causing us to feel, like we have a more loaded plate, shall we say. It's better to address that first and bring our attention to the context layer and regulate ourselves first before we really busy ourselves with dealing with the story, right? Because again, if you feel more relaxed, more safe in your body, you're probably going to have an easier time dealing with whatever difficulties may be in the content and in the narrative and in the story for you. A lot of times people kind of make the mistake of just getting really caught up in the content and the struggles and the blame and the shame and the judgment and the roles and the relationships. And it's really hard to get unentangled from that. And then we kind of carry that knot of struggle with us forward in life, sometimes for years and years and years. And we wonder why, why it's still a problem, or why it's still an issue, or why we still have feelings, or how come we haven't healed, or what have you. And so I do think for most of us, again, getting the regulation tool in place, regulating the state of the nervous system first, pays off so beautifully 9 times out of 10. And then if there's stuff to do around the narrative, it's going to be 100% easier than if we don't. A lot of times, when I'm coaching people, we actually use the narrative to get aware of the dysregulation there, right? So let's say someone comes to me and they have a personal, growth goal. They're like, I really want to, become amazing at this, or I want to really figure out, what my life purpose is, or, what's meaningful to me. And, and there's a lot of stress around that, trying to figure that out, or a lot of, shame around that, or guilt or sadness around that, right? We will often use kind of the story to get down to really highlighting and being like, look, what if the stress wasn't here around this? Would this be as hard of a thing to figure out, or as hard of a thing to learn or do or progress with if there was no stress here, right? And I really make the point a lot with my clients that stress, especially for those of us, I think, especially who either go really into fight or flight and we get totally overwhelmed, or those of us who really numb out and shut down and disengage when we get stressed, for those of us that are wired up like that, which I think is probably a huge chunk of people, I'm tempted to say the majority, but I don't really know. For those of us who are wired like that, though, assuming that we're going to progress effectively while we're stressed out just makes no sense. If your nervous system is going to swing into dysregulation every time you're stressed out, and you're not dealing with that dysregulation, it's going to be really hard to progress or achieve or experience whatever it is you want to experience, right? And so I lay this out for my clients, and they almost always get it. And I give examples of, think of something you learned where there's no pressure around learning it. And then think about how easily you picked it up and what your experience was like learning that thing, right? Now think about something that was really high stakes, high pressure. You had to absolutely get it right. And if you didn't, it was going to really be a big deal in your life. And think about how easy it was to learn that thing, right? How quickly did you learn it? How comfortably did you learn it? How comfortable did you feel making mistakes in the process of learning, which is inevitably a part of learning, right? And it always comes clear that, right, the more stressed, the more overwhelmed, the more triggered, the more challenged, the more pressure I feel around the thing, the harder it is to learn and grow and do, right? And so I really want you to get this, that in order for you to really effectively do this healing, transformative work, start with that layer of regulating and supporting your nervous system to feel safer, to take the pressure off, to take the stress out of the situation before you really go into, figuring it out. And the last thing I'll say about this is that often, what I find with a lot of my clients is that's actually where the wound is. The wound is actually sometimes not in the experience we had, the memory we have, the emotion. The wound is in, I really, have a lot of judgment about myself, or I have a difficult relationship to myself around this area where I need to grow, right? And it's shocking for a lot of people to realize that that's where the wound is, that, oh, I need to grow in this way, and I'm making it harder on myself, and I've normalized being hard on myself about this. No wonder I'm stuck, right? No wonder I can't progress with this. No wonder healing seems elusive and confusing, right? And so again, 2 layers, you can work with either one. It is a feedback loop, but I think, the best bang for your buck, so to speak, whether this is self-healing or in therapy or what have you, is going to be with working with the regulation layer and working with the state of your nervous system first, creating a felt sense of ease, comfort, relaxation, balance, safety, less pressure, more of an ability to return there easier, really getting the feel for how to return yourself to that state of less pressure. And that then makes it a little bit easier, a little bit safer to then process whatever the contents of your experience are or have been. So I hope that's useful. I hope that makes sense. And as always, do me a favor, if you resonate with either, the channel, this particular video, what have you, do the YouTube things for me, please. Comment down below if this hits home for you, leave a thumbs up, and, let the algorithm know I'm here and that this is a useful video for you, or, consider subscribing if you really like my presentation and my ideas. So enough said for now. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you all so much, and I hope you're doing well out there. And I've got more content on the way for you, so please stay tuned. All right.